there are still a few people logging in. We'll actually start the webinar proper in approximately 2 minutes. Thank you. Welcome to the Benchmark version 7.7 webinar on new features available in the current release of version 7.7. This webinar will be recorded for viewing at a later date, and if you have any questions, please feel free to submit them using the chat window, and they will be responded to you individually following the session. We have a fairly large number of people attending today, so we won't be addressing any questions during this webinar. This webinar will be a reasonably high-level demonstration and explanation of the new features and functions in version 7.7. As I say, all queries will be gratefully received and will respond to you in due course. Yes, the recording is, the webinar is being recorded for viewing at a later date. So we might start. There are actually still quite a few people to log in. However, we'll start the webinar now. Up on the screen there is a list of the new features and improvements in version 7.7. This is a copy of the release notes which all attendees would have received via email for downloading, and please read those in your own good time. We'll be going through these features and functions at a fairly high level. Some of them are quite technically detailed. This is probably not the forum to get into too much technical detail. This will be reasonably high level run through of the features and functions. So just go through the list of new features in version 7.7. New localization settings. They are settings which, when brought into the database, will determine currency and number formatting. And number settings can be overridden, and we'll have a look at that shortly. Relevant to localization settings is multicurrency. Multicurrency enables the user to have different currencies in their database, and different resources can be priced using different currencies. The currencies can be manipulated in terms of the exchange rates. There are general settings for the exchange rates that are entered in an administration screen. They can flow through into the project via the resource library, and they can be maintained and edited globally or on a project-specific basis. Benchmark version 7.7 has a more customizable user interface in which you can display and hide different columns in the project and resource screens. Estimating features, multi-currency, very comprehensive feature, mostly for our international users. The resource rate change screen has been enhanced, showing multi-currency and some other features. Bringing resources into your project is quite a dynamic feature now. You can keep the resource library open while working in different areas of your estimate or estimates, and you can drag and drop resources into your project, which will give the opportunity for quite quick estimating in terms of adding resources into your project. Quantity calculator in different screens. The item and resource level has been enhanced with some additional calculations. Routines have been enhanced with additional calculations and some additional functionality. Using the load spreadsheet and load new project feature has now been improved to include the save spreadsheet function so that you can save your marked up submission rates back to a schedule when using the load spreadsheet and load new project function. Allocate and auto allocate functions have been enhanced. We'll go through that in due course. Security features, we have a LDAP, Lightweight Directory Access Protocol integration for some of our corporate users, eliminating the needs for individual passwords and greater security control over your system. New estimator access levels in the estimator library. And regarding reports, exports and word templates, we have some new reports improvements to existing reports, some new exports to Excel, and a new merge marker, which can be populated in a Microsoft Word document. We have an export to Levisis, which is a job costing package, an ERP, an enterprise resource package, and we also have progress claims, improvements to progress claims, improved usability, and exports to Excel from progress claims. The duplicate project window has been improved and actually simplified. It's a nice clean looking screen. All the relevant information is still available in a slightly clearer presentation. We have expanded use of mandatory fields and other minor improvements. So I will now go to Benchmark, bring up Benchmark. We have access to two databases here, and I'll just open up the first database, which is a professional database, and I've logged in straight away. In this database, I wanted to actually just show you the regional settings which are found in an administration window. So if I go to Administration Settings, in the tax system and currency field, you can nominate a region. So I guess this is really of more relevance to international clients who can operate in different, or they can elect their home or base currency. It's quite a list of currencies there. Benchmark is active in quite a few countries around the world at the moment. So I'll just cancel that mode. When you do select a region from this regional settings drop-down, in this preview pane here, you can see the currency that will be included in your database by default, the integer number settings and decimal number settings. Time and date settings are also defaulted based on your selected region. So you can see here long date, short date and time are default settings. Regarding the integer number and the number and currency settings, they're shown over here on the right hand side under currency formatting. You can see the defaults. Defaults can be overridden by editing and clicking the override button, and you can change the format of your currency, how it's displayed throughout the project and also in reports. Over here on the right hand side, number formatting, the defaults can also be overridden for a professional database. These settings also are relevant to our multi-currency feature, which is activated outside of the administration's window from the File menu. File, Utilities, Enable Database for Multi-Currency. There is a small wizard, a two-step wizard for enabling multi-currency within a database. This particular professional database that I have open is not activated for multi-currency. I will shortly connect to a separate database where I've prepared a small amount of data for demonstrating the multi-currency functionality. In this particular database though, I will just demonstrate the enabling multi-currency wizard. So initially in this two-step wizard, you select from the drop-down box, you select a region or locality, which will then assign default currencies and time and date settings and number settings as well into your database. Once you select a currency, the next step is to simply add a couple of currencies, or at least one currency, into the wizard. I'm not paying too much attention to detail here, however, you complete that after entering a currency conversion rate in there. You add one currency into the wizard to complete that activation of multi-currency in the database. I'll now change databases to view a database which has some data around multi-currency set up. You see that now that I've changed databases, in the login screen, the login code field is actually grayed out. This is due to LDAP settings, lightweight directory access protocol integration. There'll be more on that shortly. So I'll just now log into this database. What we wanted to demonstrate in this database was multi-currency and the features and functions around multi-currency. Once multi-currency is activated in the database, which it has been in this particular database, you can see here that enable this database for multi-currency, that's the small two-step wizard that I went through in the previous database. It is activated in this database. So the steps of activating multi-currency have already been done, and your default home or the currency that you are working in and reporting to your clients and estimating in has been selected in the database, and default settings around that have been included in the administration screen. So now we go to the administration settings and the tax system and currency tab. Opening up the tax system and currency tabs, we are informed here that multi-currency feature is enabled. Tax system settings here, GST, you can edit the GST percentage. More importantly, however, though, is the base currency or the region that has been selected in the wizard to introduce or enable multi-currency. And when this setting region has been selected in the settings, you can see the currency and number and time and date default settings as per the previous database. However, the difference between the previous database we looked at and this database with multi-currency enabled is that down at the bottom of the screen we have different currencies selected for the database. Similar to the previous database, here we have currency formatting, which can be overridden, and number formatting over here, which can be overridden as well. In this administrations window, under tax system and currency, you can maintain and add different currencies into the database. So we'll just go through that step here. You can see that 3 have been included in this database. To add more, you simply click on the add button and select the details and enter your conversion, your exchange rate, and so on. We'll just close out of that process there. Just going back now, just to have a little bit of a further look here and discussion around multi-currency. So these currencies that we've selected and entered in here and entered exchange rates for the relevant currencies, they will apply by default to resources in the resource library that are marked as using currency, indeed marked as being currency resources. I might just add at this point that multi-currency is an add-on module for Benchmark. So please contact sales@benchmarkestimating.com for any pricing details and any inquiries to purchase the multi-currency module. The default settings here, or the multi-currency settings in this window in the administration, as I mentioned previously, they will flow through into the resource library, and resources in the resource library can be locked to these settings in administration. Once those resources are used in a project, they will be locked to the project settings. When you create a project in Benchmark following enabling of multi-currency, these settings that we can see in the multi-currency window down here are included in the project initially. They can be overridden and they will become project specific in terms of the exchange rates that you enter here. Once a locked resource is added into a project, it is locked to the project settings. So if these administration default settings, which appear in a project initially, if they have been edited in a project and a resource that is locked to the multi-currency settings is added into a project, it will adopt the project exchange rates. I'll now just go to the estimated library to show some of the settings around multi-currency. There are two settings around multi-currency that have been added into the estimated library. So user by user, a user can be granted access regarding multi-currency to adjust the exchange rates within the project exchange rates window. So as I previously mentioned, if a project is created and the database is using multi-currency, the project will receive the exchange rates from the administration's window. So with this access level marked to 1 on the right hand side, this particular user will have the ability to edit the exchange rates in the project on a project by project basis. When those exchange rates are edited in a project, they will not be affected by any changes to the administration exchange rates. Changing the administration exchange rates in the administration setting, changing the exchange rates in the administration settings will flow into the libraries but will not flow through into the project. The next access level in the estimated library regarding multi-currency is the ability to unlock the exchange rate for an individual resource in a project. So this means that a project, if marked with a 1 in the level column, they will have the ability to edit exchange rates in a project for particular resources, resource by resource, as compared to being able to edit the more global settings that apply to the project in general. I'll now close the estimated library and go to the resource library, where we can see some of the features that have been added regarding multi-currency. In the quick search fields in the top of the screen, there's a new field for currency. You can search for resources of an individual currency. So if I select Great British Pounds and find, you can see now in these additional columns that have been added in this screen, the currency rate, the actual currency that has been added, and the exchange rate. In the advanced find feature, we have some extra fields in the bottom of the list here, bottom of this screen, to show search and filter resources by currency only, non-currency. We can select a particular currency from the drop-down as per the quick find feature at the top of the screen, and we can also search by currency resources that are locked or unlocked. So I wanted to reveal all currency resources. We can do that quite quickly. Now, a resource that is a currency resource is being checked as a currency resource. We have a checkbox here on the left-hand side, and you can select from the drop-down box. If I just actually edit this resource, you can see that these are the currencies that have been set in the administrations window, so they are available for all resources in the database. The currency rate for the resource, that is an individual rate, the rate that you are purchasing your material or perhaps hiring labour from in the foreign currency, and the exchange rate. With a currency resource, you can see that I have this resource in an edit mode. However, the rate field is greyed out. The rate field is not a manual editable field. It is not an input in a currency resource. The rate for the resource in your base currency is the result of the currency rate times the exchange rate. This particular resource that I've highlighted is locked, meaning that the exchange rate visible here in the library has been populated in the resource library due to, or as a result of, and connected to the administration settings. When this particular resource is added into a project, it will remain locked. However, it will be locked to the project exchange rate settings, which we'll view in a moment. The purpose there is, or the result being, that it is locked initially to the admin settings, which are globally, and if those global exchange rate settings have been edited in a project, this resource, when added into the project, will adopt any project-specific or edited exchange rates. Regarding our corporate clients who are using a corporate regionalised database, there are settings that can be assigned to regional resources as per this screenshot. So here we have a resource for a backhoe with operator and some regional settings for that resource, so that you can see that currency can be enabled for particular regions with a particular currency selected, and the currency rate can be entered region by region, and also individual exchange rates region by region if required. I'll have a quick look now at the item library to view a currency resource in the item library. I have an item here, finished concrete. If I double click to reveal the resource level, there's simply one resource shown in this screen, labourer. You can see that it is a currency resource in US dollars, the currency rate in US dollars, and the exchange rate. So you can see here that the actual rate for the resource is the result of the currency rate times the exchange rate. This resource is locked, meaning that the exchange rate is as per the administration settings. By editing and unchecking the lock status of this currency resource, you can give it a specific exchange rate relevant to this resource. We'll now go into a project to view how currency resources are used within a project. I've opened up a project, navigate to the section level. At the section level, you can see that there's a new feature that we'll get to shortly. Submission values are now shown in the project section screen. We have a section here, currency items, navigating to the item level. We have a couple of items here, and you can see that we have also submission rates and submission amounts now shown in this screen, and they can be updated at any time. If I open up this particular item to go to the project resources level, you can see that in the right-hand side over here in the grid or list portion of the screen, we have some additional columns showing the currency rate for each resource, if used, if it is an actual currency resource. So just on that note, Benchmark still utilises normal resources in the normal traditional method. Not every resource has to be marked as currency resource, obviously just those where you're purchasing materials or perhaps hiring labour from overseas. And the actual currency of the resource shown here and the exchange rate in additional columns. A couple of resources here, currency resources. This particular resource we have highlighted is locked. So if this resource was still in, well, if this particular resource in the resource library would be locked to the administration exchange rate. Now that this resource is in the project, it is locked to the project exchange rates if they have been edited from the administration settings. We'll have a look at the project exchange rate settings in a moment. This particular resource is not linked to the library. If it was linked to the library, that would be relevant to the actual rate. So it would receive the currency rate as per the library. That can be edited as on a resource by resource basis in the project. We might now go to the project level and right-clicking and navigating to the exchange rates screen. Project exchange rates. When you create a project in Benchmark, the currencies that are entered in administration settings are available for use within the project. You can edit these on a project-by-project basis. If I select edit, you can see now that the editable fields are highlighted in yellow, so you can apply project-specific exchange rates for the different currencies that your project is using. Your home or base currency is shown at the top of the screen in Australian dollars, and you can see here some summary details around different currencies used in the project and the total cost and the percentage of the project cost that those currencies represent. Also demonstrated in a pie graph on the left-hand side here, and some direct cost and indirect cost summary figures shown. So just to reiterate and to recap, when you create a project, the administration settings exchange rates appear in your project. They can be edited project by project. So then within a project, when you add a resource from the resource library and the exchange rate is locked in the resource library, when that resource is in the resource library, it is locked to the administration settings. When that resource is brought into your project, it is locked to these settings, these project-specific exchange rates, which start out as per the administration settings, but they can be edited on a project-by-project basis, so that when you add those locked currency resources into your project, they adopt any edited and revised exchange rates on a project-by-project basis. You can also individually edit resources within a project, including the exchange rate and the currency rate for the individual resources. Just close this. Screen. We might now have a look at the Lightweight Directory Access Protocol, or LDAP integration, that has been introduced as part of the new version 7.7. Lightweight Directory Access Protocol, or LDAP, is a network directory where all user settings are stored. Applications that integrate with LDAP can use this directory to check what a user can or cannot do on the network. For example, you can deny or grant access to files on the network printers, or network applications. If an LDAP server is in use, this means that there is only one location to edit user access settings, centralized control of your network. Benefits being that if an employee leaves an organization, they can be removed and from the LDAP directory, and then will therefore have no access to any of the files on or applications on your server. LDAP affords you a central administration of network security, reduces the requirement for multiple passwords, and users can be grouped and managed quite efficiently. There is quite a bit of technical detail regarding the implementation within Benchmark of LDAP. It's a very technical implementation, suggested to be done by your IT specialist. So we won't go into too much detail around that in this webinar. However, we'll just show you the administration integration settings around LDAP within Benchmark, how it actually impacts on the user. So I've brought up the integration settings window, and around LDAP over on the right hand side here, once it has been implemented by your IT specialist, in terms of general user editing of the functionality, LDAP status is active, and we can elect that a user enters a password on connection or not. So if I just cancel these integration settings, close that window, if I click Change Database, LDAP is enabled in this database, has been set up, so you can see here that my name is in the login code. I cannot log in as anybody else, I can only log in as myself under my credentials. So if I just type in my password now, my password was required. So just to demonstrate the difference with LDAP around benchmark functionality and logging in, you can actually determine that a password is not required. So now if I log into the database again, selecting the database, I'll log in automatically with no requirement to enter a password. That's all we're going to look at in terms of LDAP in this webinar. Benchmark has a new integration feature, an export to Levisys. Levisys being an enterprise resource planning application. Benchmark utilises cost codes to interact with Levisys. So regarding cost codes in the administration settings, for integration with Levisys, you have to elect to display section and item cost codes. Levisys will use cost codes at the item level, so that has been done in this database. The other, you must actually, the cost codes that are then set up within the codes window in Benchmark, they must specifically match the dissection codes in Levisys. So your cost codes have to be item level cost codes, and they have to be set up in accordance with your dissection codes within Levisys. The other requirement is that your units of measurement in Benchmark have to match the units of measurement as used in Levisys. Once that is set up, it's quite a simple matter of, from within a project, you can produce a report under job costing exports to Levisys. That will produce a CSV file that can then be imported into Levisys. One of the new features and functionality brought into Benchmark is an advanced user interface, and it is a more customizable user interface. To customize your Benchmark user face and user interface, that will be reflected in the resource and items levels in the administration settings. If we go into the hide display fields, you can see down here that in terms of displaying different fields, you can now display submission prices in project sections window, submission prices at the item window, and submission price detail at the resource level. That would be summary detail. There are additional columns available for viewing in different screens in Benchmark in the resource level. You can add additional columns or hide columns for crew size, category, and production rate group, which are previously existing columns, and subcontractor column. There is a resource text column that can be now viewed, and a cost code column. At the item level, there is a column can be introduced or hidden to show text, particular item text, and cost codes. I'll just close the administration settings and open up a project where we can have a quick look at some of those additional columns. Navigating down through the section level, you can see that project submission amount can be shown here. When estimating throughout the estimating process and you wanted to refresh the project submission amount at the section level, you can do that by clicking the Update Subvalues button here. If I navigate to the item level by double clicking, again you can see that the section submission amount is shown here, and you can update those for the section at any time. Regarding the grid or list portion of the screen, you can see here that there are submission rate and submission amount columns now shown, and calculation, which was a previous column. A new column is the text. So for a particular resource, you can enter text for that item, I beg your pardon, and that text can be shown in this screen, and cost codes. So I just might go back to administration. You can see here that at the item level, we can see the calculation, text, cost code columns, and the submission rate and submission amount. As determined, administration, hide display fields. You can hide the item text or cost codes. I might navigate back into that project, have a look at the resource level. At the resource level from within a project, you now have item submission amount and details. You can update those at any time, and additional columns for text, currency rate, the actual currency that that resource is using, and the exchange rate. So they can be edited on a resource by resource basis. Regarding resources in a project, while we're here at the resource level, there's a new feature to give you the ability to drag and drop resources into a project. So if I right click and select Add from Resource Library, the resource selection list is shown on the screen, rather large. So you can see here, you can search by resources by the traditional methods, and you can actually keep this screen open. I might just minimize it a little bit. So if I select a number of resources, I might actually search by labour. If I highlight the number of resources, you can see over here we've got 7 resources in our project at the moment. I can click and drag those 3 that I have highlighted, and now we have 10, so they're brought into a project. I can leave this resource selection list open, and from within the project navigate to other items and drag them across into that item. I can have in the bottom part of this screen some resources, so plant resources, for instance, shown at the bottom of the screen. I can have those sitting in the bottom portion of the screen, as shown here, 2 dozers. And then if I wanted to actually leave those resources sitting in the bottom part of the screen, and I wanted to again find labour resources, I can selectively drag and drop those into the screen, and I can also drag and drop from the bottom part of the screen. So I could leave certain resources sitting here in the top of the screen and have 2 areas to select from for dragging and dropping resources into a project. Using 2 screens might be a little bit clearer. Sorry, I'm just working on my laptop for the purpose of this webinar. So I've got a little bit cluttered there, but using two screens would enhance that functionality. There are some improvements to the quantity calculator. So let's just have a quick look at those. We'll close this resource selection screen down. In the calculator icon, opening up the calculator for a resource level, there are a couple of extra formulas available. We have floor and ceiling and round up and round down, round. Round up and round down are the new calculator, new formulas available in the calculator within the project. Round up, rounding up to any given number of decimal places. Round down, rounding down to any number of given decimal places, as well as floor and ceiling. Floor rounding down to multiples of a certain number, and ceiling rounding up to certain multiples of a certain number. There are some improvements to routines, those being some additional calculations. Round up and round down are available in routines. The ceiling function ceiling formula has been added into routines. The floor formula has been added into routines. And just on that, if you're rounding up to multiples of a certain number within a routine or even within a project, that number that you are rounding up to, say it's a ceiling formula and you're rounding up to multiples of 2, it doesn't just have to be a number that you enter in that formula. It can actually reference a variable in a project or in a routine. That rounding up factor or multiple can also be an input line, so it doesn't just have to be a typed in number. Also within routines, if your routine is set up such that there are a large number of possible sections that can be created by that routine, if it's a powerful routine that's creating perhaps a schedule for your complete project, that complete list of possible sections won't automatically appear in your project. Only sections with items that have a calculated value will appear in your project. Also, if you are running a routine within a project for a second iteration, the software will recognise that the project has run that routine previously, and you will have the option to add the new items into your project for all sections or just individual sections. There are some improvements to load spreadsheet, load new project and save spreadsheet functionality. So from the project level, from within a benchmark project, previously you could load the spreadsheet and then save back your submission rates back to that spreadsheet. That functionality is now available for loading a new project or load revision. In the load spreadsheet window, there are some improvements. I'll just browse to a spreadsheet to load into the software. I've selected a spreadsheet. I've just asked to confirm the area of the spreadsheet to load in. Within the load spreadsheet functionality now, the section number is still available. The section description can actually be in a separate column now. It doesn't have to be just in the description column along with your item descriptions. This window is now formatted such that mandatory fields are highlighted with an asterisk, and when you map the relevant columns here, the shading in the mapped columns disappears, indicating what you have already mapped. The number of header rows was limited to 20 previously. It's now increased so that there's no restriction on that. If items are in your project with a 0 quantity, you can elect to load them with a quantity of 1 or not load them. And also regarding precision of numbers, it can be as formatted in the spreadsheet or full precision value, as viewed in the spreadsheet or full precision value. And as I was saying, the save spreadsheet function is now applicable to load new project and load revision. Once you map and determine some settings in this load spreadsheet window, you can save those as a template. So if you're using a similar format repeatedly for loading a schedule into Benchmark, you can now set up these settings as a template, alleviating the need to map them each time. Improvements to allocate and auto-allocate process. If we have within a project an item or a complete project that we're auto-allocating to, I've just brought up the allocate window. Some of the improvements here are in the unit column. We can see that there is a flag or a warning regarding the unit of measurement for the item. So the particular item that we've got highlighted has a unit of measurement of item, a quantity of 1. So all these flags here indicating that the items that we can select from, it highlights those of a different unit of measurement. There's also a flag if you do elect to allocate an item of a different unit of measurement. You are warned that it is a different unit of measurement. You can proceed. And there's an administration setting that can, when checked, you can auto-allocate even when an item is a different unit of measurement. So you can actually prevent that from happening with administration settings. We've looked at new estimator access levels within Benchmark. We might just revisit the estimator library. Some of the other new access permissions that have been added into the estimator library are add project. So actual creation of a project within Benchmark can now be restricted on a user-by-user basis. LDAP Administrator, so you can only edit the administration integration settings for LDAP if a user is marked as a LDAP Administrator. Multicurrency, we've looked at those, just to reiterate there though. Multicurrency, if you've created a project and that project receives exchange rate settings from the administration's window, a user can be granted the ability to edit those on a project basis. So that is edit the exchange rates within the project. And a user can also be granted or denied the ability to unlock an exchange rate and edit exchange rates for individual resources within a project. Deleting a project can now be controlled on a user-by-user basis, and also the ability to check in a project. Is now controllable on a user-by-user basis, and they are the new settings in the administration in the estimator library. There are some improvements and indeed some new reports from within Benchmark. We might just have a look at some of those reports. From the project level, there is a new report available from around the project total. It is project total resources currency analysis. So again, for perhaps some of our international users or users who are buying resources from overseas or perhaps hiring labour from overseas, you have a project total resources currency analysis report. Shows our high-level project details at the top of the screen and direct costs and indirect costs detail here in the different currencies. Bar charts showing the different currencies used in the project, and also some summary detail of the currencies used, direct cost, percentage of total direct cost, any indirect costs, and totals and percentages of that comprise the project cost. More detailed view on the second page shows all the items section by section with unlocked exchange rates, so those that might have been unlocked and edited on a project by project basis. Locked exchange rates, so they're resources within the project that are locked to the exchange rate settings for the particular project. So that's a new report regarding currency. From another new report regarding currency is available in the resource library. If I open up the resource library, from the reports window, you can produce a report regarding resources with currency. Just have a look at that on the screen. This database is just a small demonstration database we've set up for today's webinar, so there are not a great deal of resources here, just a few that are marked and have some data regarding currency and the details of those resources. There are some improvements to different reports. We'll have a look at those, a couple of those briefly. They're really regarding different currency details that can be shown in the reports. So we might have a look at the project review report. So now in the project review report, resource by resource, the currency detail is shown for each resource. So that's an enhancement to this project review report. Project summary report has some improvements. In this project summary report here, we have some direct cost currency breakdown details shown for the different currencies in the database and the percentage of that those different currencies represent of the project cost. In addition to that, all reports that are based on resource groups have been enhanced. So report direct cost resources by group summary. As an example, shows the different currency resources here. We're not actually seeing any resource currency detail there. Resources by item. Resources by item report. Again, similar to the previous report that we saw, shows the currency detail. So where currency is being used, many of those reports have been enhanced to include the currency detail. There is a new merge marker available if you're using a quote to Microsoft Word templates. The merge marker is for items by an item group. So if you're using item groups within your project, Just navigate to the item level of this particular project. If you are using the item group field, you can produce a report in a Microsoft Word document that will sum up all the items of a particular group. The resource rate change window has been improved within Benchmark. Also, so from the project level, going into the resource rate change screen, there are new tabs. This is quite a different view that some of you may be used to. Project resource rate change screen in the summary tab shows us by resource category. So it just produces a pie chart showing the different resource categories used in your project, and also your user-defined resource groups shows the monetary summary of all those groups and the pie chart representing those. Resource rates. This feature of this particular screen has been enhanced to show the editable fields highlighted in the yellow font, and it also shows percentage of total cost and the cost difference between the old and the new rates if they've been edited on a project specific basis, if you've unlinked resources and changed your rates for the different resources. There is a new tab around currency, again showing the editable fields in the yellow font. So this is a completely new screen, quite a bit of detail shown here regarding the multi-currency feature. Exchange rates, the status of resources, if they are locked or not locked, some summary detail or percentage summary detail of the percentage of total costs that each of those resources display or are using, and also the currency that each resource is using. Progress claims have been enhanced. If I navigate within a project to the progress claims window, and if I add a progress claim, if I put a particular progress claim into edit, the fields that are editable are now shown in a yellow font, including the item description. You can edit that from within the progress claims window. That's basically a couple of small improvements to progress claims. There are also 3 new exports to Excel available regarding progress claims. They are all resources by cost code for the selected claim, project total resources by group for the selected or highlighted claim in the bottom of the screen, and project total items by group, plant, labour, materials subcontracted for highlighted claim. I'll just close this progress claims window. Back to a project at the project level. There is an enhancement or improvement to the project duplication screen. It is now a more condensed screen with a couple of extra options for duplicating project regarding multi-currency. And also, when you hover over a particular option, in here the text that used to be displayed in this screen is now revealed when you hover over the question mark icon next to a relevant line, making it a slightly easier screen, slightly more user-friendly screen. All of the options are still there, and including multi-currency. When you duplicate your project regarding multi-currency, you can update the exchange rates in the duplicated project from the administration setting. The last thing that we'll look at here in this webinar is the improved mandatory fields feature from within the administrations window. In the mandatory fields tab, we have certain mandatory fields here that we can enforce if you wish to create a project. There are certain fields that can be marked as mandatory fields, and also for completing a project. Marketing analysis fields that need to be populated over here for production of any marketing analysis reports. And finally, custom fields have been added into this mandatory fields screen, so that if you are using custom fields, you can select from your custom fields that you have created and determine that they are mandatory fields for creating the project or completing the project. When fields are marked as mandatory in administration in a particular project, just close the administration window, go back to a project. Within the project, fields that are mandatory fields will be highlighted with an asterisk and a red border around those mandatory fields. In addition to the things that we've presented today at a fairly high level, there are about 30 or 40 other minor features, improvements and fixes. They're all listed at the within the release notes, which you all have the ability to download from the provided link. For people who are viewing this webinar after the live broadcast at 11 AM on the 7th of July 2015, the release notes are available from your full installation of benchmark estimating software. Would appreciate any of the questions and queries that have been submitted during this webinar. You're also most welcome to submit any queries or questions by emailing them to sales@benchmarkestimating.com. That concludes today's webinar. I'd like to thank you all very much for attending. Hope it's been informative in some way. Thank you and bye for now.